I'm Tiffany Windsor, and I would like to welcome you to Cool2Craft, the super cool place to join in and get creative, get inspired, and be cool. The theme of today's show is jewelry. Can you tell what I'm digging into? It's beads. You know, apparently a lot of you are into jewelry making because have you seen the size of the humongous department, that bead department at your local craft stores? It's filled with beads, tools, findings, everything you need for jewelry making. What's so great about jewelry is that we can all express our own style. Eco Heidi is starting off today's show with her own eco jewelry style.
I like paper just as much as I like fabric. There's so many wonderful patterns with scrapbooking paper, rice paper, any of the wonderful collage papers. So, what happens if you mix paper with a water bottle? I have a great idea. Check it out. My favorite water bottle to use for this particular project is either the Smart water bottle, or because it's smooth, or there's also the Aquafina and the Dasani because they have a space that's very smooth, and you really need the smoothness for this project because we're going to use 2 layers. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to remove the label. It's just an adhesive label on the Smart water, and you just remove it. Now you will have a glue or a stickiness, so be sure you use like Glue Gun or Undo, one of those that will remove the stickiness from that sticker. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to tape off the size of your water bottle. So let's say I want my water bottle 5/8 of an inch. I have 5/8 of an inch wide masking tape. And I just go around the bottle, and I can usually get about 8 of that size from this bottle. Then I take a craft knife, and I just put my craft knife in to get it started, and then I cut the rest with the scissors. I trim the edges, right up to the tape. On both sides. And you need 2 for each one. So you're going to remove the tape. And you're going to also cut a piece of your paper, any kind of paper that you want. This is a scrapbooking paper with a little bit of silver metallic. And I'm just going to put a little bit of glue here just to help hold it. Now, the second water bottle bracelet piece, you're going to have to cut to get it to wrap around. We're going to wrap it around, see if you can see this. There we go. We'll wrap it around like so. Now, there is going to be a space on each bracelet. No matter what, you always have a space. This one's probably about 1/16 of an inch. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some of this foil tape. It's an adhesive back, and we're going to take the adhesive back off of it. And very carefully, you don't need to take it all off at one time. You're going to start on one edge. Make sure it's centered and straight. Actually, I think if I go like this, I can probably get this first side on first, bring it out, and then that way you can see how I'm putting it on too. See how it's right down in the middle. Take a little bit more of the paper off. Right down the middle. Okay, now I'm going to put it around. So I have plastic under here. My paper is attached to the first plastic, and then I've got this second one going over. So my paper is sandwiched in between the two pieces of plastic. And I'm just going to simply push my tape over. So it catches the back side. And when I get around to the end, I'm just going to kind of pull it tight and get that last little area. The start of this one is the hardest. Once you get it started, it's a breeze. And I want to make sure that my tape is even. And then I'm going to go to the inside and smooth all that out. Smooth on the top. And there I have my first side. Then we repeat with the second side. Remove the paper back. Don't do it all the way. Put it in, and remember, on your second side, you want it to be the same space away that this one is. And again, push over the side. go to the inside. Until you have it all down, and there you have your bracelet. It looks like it's like a glass bracelet. Can't you just picture a whole bunch of these different ones on your wrist? Isn't that cool? I'm Eco Heidi, and this is Being Eco. I'll see you next time.
You can take your scrapbook papers and your water bottles and transform them into trendy jewelry. Super cool idea. When I put out the call for jewelry projects for today's show, I found that my creative girlfriends and I all shared a passion for jewelry making. Candace Jedrowitz is so talented with all of her creative work, and her jewelry making is just outstanding. She has a project that she's going to share with you today that's all about Swirly. She takes the wire, the craft wire and jewelry wire that you can find in your craft department, and she creates beautiful pendants. Here is our creative play muse, Candace J.
Thanks, Tiffany, and welcome to my studio. I love to make jewelry, and whenever I do, it's all about color and more color and lots of color. And it's also about swirly organic shapes. So I do a lot of wire wrapping, and today I'm going to show you some of how I do that. So sit back and relax, and let's make some jewelry. One of the more fun parts of making jewelry is making things that dangle. This is just a piece of brass 20 gauge wire, and I've flattened the end with a chasing hammer so that it will hold a bead on it. Yep, that's what you want. Now let's put another one on, and then we'll make a loop at the top, and that's where we will attach it to the bead piece. So I'm just going to wrap that around. And then I'm going to give it a little twist back. Check to make sure that it's standing upright. Alright, that looks pretty good. And then I would just snip off the excess. And I would also take the time to get any sharp ends off, but right now I just want to show you how that goes on. I started this part with about 12 inches. Obviously this piece isn't, but this is just to show you how I make the loop that the dangle will go on. So that will slide on. So lovely. And then I would hold this in place and twist one of the wires around. And that would be the attachment. Now I've already got my beads started here. For this one I used 3 beads instead of one long one, and I've got them all threaded on. I have a long tail and a short tail, so the long bead goes on the short tail, and then it gets the secret weapon. Yep, that's right, it's a pen cap. That's how I make my bails. I like a nice big bunchy wire bail. So it wraps around twice and crosses over. And then it wraps around the bottom. And then when you slide it out, you pinch those together and center them the best that you can. And if there's a little inequality, that's okay. That can be straightened up for the most part. This piece is going to be decorative. So I'm going to wrap a little coil, which I love. Swirly, dangly wires and sparkly beads. That is what I love about jewelry. Okay, so there's one little swirl, and now I'm going to start putting my beads on. At the bottom and at the top part of the wires, you want to use small beads because you don't want that wire to stick out too fast. And so, wait, I'll show you in a second here what I'm doing. Maybe. Come on, you. Get on. All right, I'm going for another one. Which one? Small one. That one. Perfect. Okay. Here is why you want them to be small, because as you wrap them, they're going to be close in on the beads. And if you had a very big bead right here, it would bump out too fast. So you want to start yourself with a couple of coils around, and you want to make the decision, how many times do you want it to go around? Do you want it to be tight or loose? And then you string your beads on. Now, here's one that I have. This is one long bead, and I kind of like the way that looks too. Now, this one is just about finished, so let me put some of the small beads on. Because remember, you do the small beads at the top and the bottom for the same reason. Oh, all right, you guys, this is a conspiracy. They don't want to get on my wire. I'll do one more, and then I will wrap. Here's a green one. Yay, green. Okay, so I've done this one the same way, and I have my one curly Q at the top. And now as I wrap this around, I'm going to end up with another tail. Yes, I do. I like the way that looks. Okay. And I can go one more time around. When I do two curly Qs, one faces up and one faces down, because that's how I like it. And you can, well, I want it to be a little tighter than that. If you can make it work with your fingers, you get a really cool, not perfect curly Q. Now, it does need to be a little tighter than that. So I can do that with my pliers. And let me show you one that's already done. I have a couple different examples. This one has one curly Q, and that's 3 beads again. That's a little bit shorter than the first one you saw. This one is 3 taller beads, and it has the little bone dangle at the bottom. This one is copper wire too. I love copper. And then this one was done with 2 wires. And the reason I did that was because I wanted one to come up through the bead and put the little leaf on and make the little curly Q at the end of it, so it kind of looks like a pumpkin. And then I made a cage for it with the other 3 lengths. I like that too. And this one at the bottom with the dangle, I made the spiral, and then I flattened it a little bit with the chasing hammer. I like that look, and it makes the light hit it a little differently and bounce off real pretty. And this one is the example that I made that you saw. The difference in this one is that I added the little swirl on the dangle bead. And there you have it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this jewelry project. I know I enjoyed making it. I hope that you're inspired to try something like it, and that if you do, you take pictures and I get to see them. Thanks, everyone.
So as you can see, once you learn how to use those pliers and the right weight of wire, you can make some really super cool jewelry. Linda Peterson is the author of several jewelry making books. She has a new book, and it's all about metal jewelry. Today, Linda is here to share with you a simple stamping technique in metal. I'm delighted to welcome Linda Peterson.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my studio. I am so excited that you are joining me today. I'm going to share with you one of my favorite metalworking techniques. In fact, metal jewelry is really hot. It's very trendy, it's super fashionable, but I bet you didn't know it's super easy also. So I'm going to show you how to stamp words into metal. This is a great technique, well, because I love words. I love words because they're inspiring to me. And you can also use this technique to create personalized gifts for your friends and family. Well, who doesn't love a gift that was made just for them? So let's head on over to my workspace and I'll show you how to do it. So here are the supplies that I've gathered that you'll need for this particular project. First of all, over here I have a bench block, and this bench block has kind of a rubber stopper. This is actually really helpful because it helps to absorb some of the shock from when you hit against this with a hammer. I also have right here, these are metal stamps, and these are alphabet stamps. You get these in the local hardware store. There's a couple right here that I've taken out. I have some brass findings here, and these are pre-cut shapes. You can also cut your own shapes out of brass, but these I just happened to purchase this way. I also have a hammer. I have some steel wool, and in the center up here I have some rub and buff. And this is actually what's going to highlight some of our letters after we stamp them. So the first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to pull my bench block closer to me because I already have a piece on my bench block. And I've already stamped actually a couple of the letters in the piece of brass here. But sometimes when you get your brass, it comes and it can have some tarnish on it or a little bit of patina. And if you like that, that's perfect and you don't have to do anything. But for this particular technique, or really for the sake of demonstrating this to you, just so you can see it a little bit easier, I'm going to shine this up with just a little bit of steel wool. So you just rub the steel wool over the top of it, and it gives your metal, whether it's copper or brass, a real nice little kind of a matte brushed sheen. And you can do this technique on brass or on copper, aluminum, whatever you prefer. You'll notice here that I already have a couple of little letters stamped in there, and it's very, very easy. It's very similar to if you were rubber stamping. And I've started the word love. So I have the L and the O, and now we're going to follow that up with the V. One thing you want to make sure is that when you're stamping with the letter correctly placed. Make sure that it's right side up. And then you're just going to hit it a couple times with the hammer, and this is going to make a little bit of noise. One thing I want you to remember too is to keep your stamp firm against your bench block so that it doesn't bounce, because if it bounces as you hammer it, you're going to get multiple stampings, and it's going to kind of ruin it. So just like that, there's the V, and here is the E. Okay, so I have love stamped in there. Now I'm going to leave it on my bench block just to show you this next little trick here. And I have some rub and buff. You can put this on with your finger, or you can have a little towel here because it doesn't take a whole lot. And then you just rub over those letters. Make sure that this wax, the rub and buff's kind of a waxy thing, gets into all the cracks, and let that sit there for 5 to 10 seconds. Let it dry just a little bit, and then wipe off the excess. You want to make sure that you leave the black into the letters, and that'll highlight them, and then they'll stay there. So it's a really simple technique, again, to just personalize something for your friends or family, or if you want to stamp in some words. There's even some textures that are out there. There's some patterns like little flowers that you can stamp in. And let me give you a close-up of what this looks like. There you go. So now you can see the word love. I have some other examples of jewelry that I've actually used this technique in. So why don't we take a look at that right now? Well, who knew you could have this much fun with a hammer and make some great jewelry too. This is a great technique. I know you're going to enjoy it. So I hope you make lots of metal jewelry for yourself, your friends, and your family. And I hope that you keep living the creative life. Thanks for joining me in my studio. I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Isn't it cool how you can take that metal stamping technique to create just simple charms, or you can stack those pieces up to create stunning, stunning jewelry? For those of you who have been tuning in to Cool2Craft this past year, you know that top of my jewelry making list is Cool2Cast. It is a plaster product that you can pour into molds to create lots of really fun jewelry. One of my very favorite techniques is embedding into Cool2Cast. I'd like to show you what I do with crystals. It's lots of fun to embed buttons and beads and stones and charms into Cool2Cast. The first thing that you want to do is prepare your mold. Just drop your pieces into the mold. Make sure that they fit. Some of these pieces that I grabbed are too large and the Cool2Cast will not cover them. So be sure that you check out to make sure that your stones and buttons and beads fit into your molds. I'm going to be mixing up just a small batch of Cool2Cast today, and a great way to do that is to mix it in a plastic bag. So I have a half a cup of Cool2Cast, and I'm adding a 1/4 cup of water. Put that all together in the plastic bag and give it a good shake and mix it up for about a minute. I have some that's stuck in the corner here that I want to make sure gets into the water. So be sure and check the corners of your bag. Keep shaking. You want this to be the consistency of pancake batter. This pouring from the bag technique is what my sister Heidi came up with. I usually do much larger batches. I can see I have a little bit of dried Cool2Cast in the corner. But now we're ready to pour. So carefully give that bag a squeeze to fill up the mold. I'm going to come back and tap that mold so that it covers that piece. And we have one more, oh, two more up here. Don't overfill your mold. Now what you want to do is gently tap it on the side. I'm going to move that Cool2Cast around just a little bit. I can see that I need a little bit more in this piece right here. I have more room in that mold and I want to cover up that crystal. There we go. When you tap on the side, it helps to level and also bring any of those air bubbles to the top. The next thing we're going to do is let this set for about 1 hour for the Cool2Cast to become solid so we can pop them out of the mold. But leave this undisturbed for about 1 hour. Now that my pieces have been setting for an hour, it's time to unmold them. And you can tell by pressing on them that the Cool2Cast is firm, but it's still moist. Turn your mold over, just press, and they pop right out. And at this point, what I like to do is take a wooden skewer or a toothpick and help to move some of that plaster off the top of the stone or the crystal. It's really easy to do this while this is right out of the mold and still a little moist. So you can see that that helps to uncover the piece that's embedded into the Cool2Cast. So keep working at that. You can see sometimes you have to really push that Cool2Cast to the side because it has, remember that stone was at the bottom of the mold, so sometimes the fiber plaster comes up underneath that, which then would be the top of your piece. So you have to push a lot of it aside. You can see on this one that the stone, you can just barely see it, but watch when I start pushing it back. It starts to uncover that stone that's been embedded. So keep working to uncover all of the items that you have embedded into your molded piece. And what you want to do then is let these set aside for a couple of hours or overnight to dry. Once your pieces have set for several hours or overnight, they're ready to color. One more step before you start coloring is you might take a wet wipe and just gently rub it along the edge and the back, or take sandpaper and rub it along the edge and the back surface, and that helps to smooth it. I like the wet wipes while these pieces are still slightly damp, because it smooths those edges nicely without getting a lot of dust from sanding. I use alcohol ink to color my pieces, and there are a couple of different methods. You can apply your ink directly. Which gives you some beautiful patterns. You can go bold and bright. Or subtle. Be sure also when you color these to color the back completely. You always want your jewelry pieces to look just as good on the back as they do on the front. You will find that the ink reacts differently depending on how long you have let your pieces dry. come back with my wet wipe to wipe down the crystal or the stone to remove any excess ink. Let these pieces dry completely because the next step we are going to overstamp, so this ink needs to be dry completely. Once your pieces have dried, it's time to overstamp them. And by the way, if you don't want ink on your fingers, be sure and wear gloves when you're doing any of your inking. I pick some of my stamps that have intriguing design to them, and you'll find that you can use just corners of stamps or use an entire stamp for your overstamping. I use my Stays On, which is a solvent ink in jet black, and ink up my stamp. And I like to take my piece and press it right into the stamp. That gives me a little bit more control of placement. You can see on this design it's very subtle, so I want to be sure and add plenty of ink onto my stamp. You can also press your stamp into your piece. Whenever I get any sort of ink on that stone, I just wipe it off with my wet wipe. Let's try this design. We'll use the butterfly wings. And don't worry if there's any spots that don't have a design, because you can take some of your very small stamps and fill in that design. So keep stamping all of your pieces and let that ink dry. The final step is to add your 3D glaze over the top, and that is how you create your embedding into Cool2Cast. Cool2Cast and the jewelry molds are available for purchase at shop.cool2craft.com. I'm going to start wrapping up today's show, but stick around because we have a few announcements after today's show. I would like to thank my special guests today. Eco Heidi Borchers created these water bottle and paper bangle bracelets. Candace J wrapped wire to create this swirly pendant. Linda Peterson stamped up some custom metal jewelry. And I showed you how to embed into Cool2Cast to create custom pendants. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by the Cool2Craft Facebook fan page and leave a comment. Or you can head on over to cool2craft.com and check out all the cool ideas and sign up for our giveaways, or just drop by to hang out. Thanks again for joining us today. Get creative, get inspired, be cool. Bye.